समरो मंत्र भलो Pranam, Jai Jinendra. Welcome to today's class, and we will carry on with our discussion on Nav Tatva. I don't have any slides today, but I will add up today's slides in the ongoing program, label it as something that we discussed today, and then once I've finalized the slides from last week, we'll try and send them all to you through Sandeepai. There was a request last time that can I share the slides? So I'll try and complete those, including today's topic, and send it to you. So before we carry on with our discussion, let's start with the prayers, as usual. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Sittanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Manglanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Manglanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Namo Arihantanam, Namo Siddhanam, Namo Ayariyanam, Namo Vajjayanam, Namo Loye Sabbasahunam. Eso Panchanamukaro Sabba Pavapanasano Manglanancha Sabbe Simpadamam Havai Mangalam. Veera Sarusura Surendra Mahito Viramuda Sansrita Veeranabhiyata Swakarmanichayo Veera Nityam Nama Veera Tirthamidam Prautmatulam Veera Shigoram Tapo Veera Sri Druti Kirtikanti Nichaya Sri Veerabhadram Visa Kamathe Dharanendra Cha Sochitam Karma Kurvati Prabhustulya Manovrutti Parshanath Sri Estuvaha अंगूठे अमृतवसे लपतितणा भंडार श्री गुरु गौतम समरिये मनवांछित फलदातार. In our discussion on Nav Tatva, the 9 essential elements in the universe, we have so far concentrated on Jeev Tattva, and I introduced the topic of Ajeev Tattva last week very briefly. We'll carry on with the discussion with Ajeev Tattva, but throughout this particular topic, we will keep on coming back to Jeev Tattva. And as I've explained before, that is the core or essential reason why we study Nav Tattva. The study of Nav Tattva is considered to be the first stepping stone towards understanding who we are, realizing who we are, and hoping that at some level we begin to experience our true self as opposed to our combined association with the body. So basically what it is called is Bhed Gnan, realizing that the soul is different from the body, even though in this stage the two are together, and ultimately reaching the stage where we begin to identify ourselves as separate from the body. And that level of understanding and ultimately experience is what helps the soul's journey towards moksha, and that would be the first step. Now, there is a constant emphasis on understanding this. And if we look at some of the things that are mentioned in the Atichar of what a Shravak should be doing, then there is one particular phrase that comes in probably in Vanditu as well as in the Atichar that we recite during the Pakhi, Chaumasi and Savansari Pratikramans. It says, Jeev Jivadi Sukshma Vichar Sadaya Nahi. Meaning that we did not engage in the finer understanding of the difference between a Jeev and a Jeev. And we did not make an effort to incorporate that understanding within our psyche on a regular basis, and we did not engage in exploring that difference. And it's considered to be so important as being essential to everyday practice. So the knowledge of Nav Tatva is not something that we just learn in the books or during this class. It's something that needs to be understood and applied on a regular basis to everything that we do. And it is at the core of a deeper understanding of Jain Dharma. Having said that, the reason to understand the difference between what is Jeev, that is life, and that which is not life, or Jeev and Jad, is that the more clearly we understand that, the easier it becomes to distinguish between the two. Let me read this couple of lines. I know most of you are familiar with some level of Gujarati, but if I just read this, let me see how much of this makes sense. And I'm sure this will make sense to Bharatbhai. But I'd like us to start exploring all these things in a more deeper sense. So let me start off with this. Our current state as being joined up with what is non-life, meaning the soul, which is life, is associated with Pudgal, that is what makes up our body, and the combined unit is what we recognize as somebody who is living. And we recognize that in ourselves, we recognize that in other living beings who we can see as mobile. We also recognize that in other living beings that we see with our naked eye, but who are not mobile, like plants, and through the medium of what Jain Dharma has been teaching us, we would accept and recognize that in the other one-sensed life forms, like Prithvikai, Apkai, Tevkai, Vaukai. So all the life that we see around us in sansar and that is present is a unit of Jeev along with Pudgal, so life and non-life. Now, even though the soul is associated with non-life, with Pudgal, it retains all its qualities as the soul, and everything that the infinite virtues that the soul has, they are not lost. They've just been suppressed. And for a life, say in Nigod, they've been suppressed to such an extent that they are barely visible. But all the essential qualities of the soul, darshan, gnan, charitra, tap, virya, and upyog, all those are present or, or exposed even to a minimum level, even in the souls in Nigod. So the most fundamental type of life that we can describe. So these essential qualities of the soul are always there, are never lost. And they are fully apparent and exposed for a jeev on Siddhshila in moksha. So the soul is completely free from all karma in that state in moksha. So all its virtues, all its qualities are completely without any kind of obstruction, fully experienced. As a result, the soul is in its full power and it is completely free, and that state then remains permanent because it has achieved its final goal. The association of the jeev with Pudgal, meaning its existence as a life form in association with Pudgal, is something that has always been the case for every soul. But that existence with Pudgal, with a body, is not permanent. So that existence comes to an end when the soul reaches the state of moksha, when that association stops permanently and the soul will never go back to any association with anything else, any Pudgal, any matter, any body, and remain completely free and independent forever. And when we talk about understanding this, Jain Dharma uses many different ways of explaining this. And a point of view is called Nai, and there are many different positions from which one can explore an understanding of Nav Tatva, and this particular appendix that I'm going to read to you very briefly, just a very short paragraph from it, is from an appendix in a current book that we are studying on in our Wednesday class, and it's titled निगोद थी निर्वाण सुधी नई सापेक्ष विचारणा. So looking at the soul's journey from nigod to nirvana, meaning to moksha, from different points of view, and it starts off with, it says that naini samajthi swarupni samajche. If you want to understand who we are, then we can explore that understanding through different points of view. માટે નય એ સાધન છે. That point of view is an instrument to understand in more depth who we are, and ultimately moving on from understanding a point of view, we want to understand the whole. So નયમાંથી નય અતીત થવું એ સાધ્ય છે. So the ultimate goal is to understand the whole, to experience the total truth of the soul. And at that point, there is no point of view. It is just an experience of the whole truth. નિગોદમાં જીવનું જડવત જીવન હોવા છતાં જીવ તત્વનો અને ગર્ભિત પરમાત્મા તત્વનો સ્વીકાર કરવો એ નૈગમ નઈ સાપેક્ષ મંતવ્ય છે. What that means, even though the soul in Nigod almost appears like some dead matter, that it has no life, to accept that there is life within that, and that life has the capacity to go to the highest point as a Paramatma, meaning that it has inherently got that capacity to become a God. The next step is બધાય જીવોને પોતાના જેવા જ જીવરૂપ ગણવા એ સંગ્રહ નહીં સાપેક્ષ મંતવ્ય છે. So recognizing that every life has that capacity and is similar, and it's similar to what I am. So again, this brings us to the core understanding of the commonality and our connection with the rest of the universe. Jati aikyata e sangrah nahi chhe, meaning we are all the same by virtue of being the soul, being alive, wherever we are, whether we are in a plant, whether we are in an insect, whether we are in a five-sensed animal somewhere, or we are a human being, a dev, or a narak. કાળ, સ્વભાવ, કર્મ, ભવિતવ્યતા અને પુરુષાર્થ એ પાંચ કારણ સમવાયમાંથી ભવિતવ્યતાની મુખ્યતા થઈ છતે તે નિગોદના જીવનું સૂક્ષ્મ નિગોદમાંથી નીકળી બહાર વ્યવહારમાં આવવું અને તેનું પૃથ્વીકાય આદિ નામકરણ થવું, બીજાની સાથે વ્યવહારમાં એટલે સંગમાં આવવું અને બીજાની સાથે વ્યવહાર થવો એ વ્યવહાર નહીં સાપેક્ષ મંતવ્ય છે. So the soul moving on from nigod onto one-sensed Prithvikai, Apkai, etc., and to come in contact with other life, that again gets into the territory of understanding our relationship with other life forms and different types of life. We discussed this in our, we had some level of discussion on Saturday, those of you who were there in the in-person class at Oswald Center. ભવિતવ્યતાના પરિપાકથી આવ્ય છતે કાળનો પરિપાક થતા જીવ અચરમાવર્ત કાળમાં ઓળંગી ચરમ પૂદગલ પરાવર્તન કાળમાં આવે છે. I mentioned that when the soul enters its last cycle, that is called the Charamavart Kal, and when just by sheer pure luck, when the level of monia karma that it has accumulated over a period of time reduces to a very significant level, then suddenly the soul begins to recognize that there may be something beyond what it has so far been identifying itself with, meaning that it has identified itself with the body, and it begins to ask the question, who am I? ત્યાં પણ કર્મ પરિણામ મહારાજાની મહેરબાની થતા જીવને પોતે કોણ છે તેની ઓળખ થાય છે. So he begins to ask that question and begins to explore that. પોતે જડ નથી પણ ચેતન છે. So I'm not non-life. I am actually ચેતન meaning life. ચેતનમાં પણ અતીત અનાગત સ્વરૂપે નથી પણ વર્તમાનમાં વર્તતો છે. Now, getting to the point where you are experiencing yourself in the moment and recognizing that the moment is the most important, forgetting the past and the present and beginning to understand the moment and experiencing that. વર્તમાનમાં પણ વર્તતા અનંતા પોતાના જેવા બીજા જીવો છે, પરંતુ તે બીજા જીવોથી તદ્દન ભિન્ન સ્વકીય રૂપે છે. So there are an infinite number of souls who are coexisting with us, but we are all separate individual souls. આવી પોતાની આગવી ઓળખ જ્યાં થાય ત્યાં તે સ્થૂલ ઋજુસૂત્ર નહીં સાપેક્ષી વિષયક વિચારણા છે, જે સ્વરૂપ વિચારણા છે. And that is when we begin to understand our true self, meaning I am the soul, I am separate from, I am alive, I am separate from that which is not alive, that is Putgal. There are similar souls all over the universe like me, but each one of us is separate from each other. We are all individuals. We are not a collective. Meaning we all have our own experiences, but we are all individuals. હુંનું ભાન થાય છે, સ્વભાન થતા જે પૂર્વે અભાન અને બેભાન હતો તે સભાન થાય છે. That is the beginning of the soul's first steps towards understanding itself. And then, as we discussed last week, what is the non-life that we see around us? Now, right at the beginning, we discuss this particular word. It will repeat this, that there are we say that the elements which are not alive are five. Those are dharmastikai, adharmastikai, akasastikai, Kad, and Pudgal. Apart from Kad, all the other elements are called astikai. Asti is pradesho. Kai means samuha. Samuha means a collective. So, apart from Kal, that is time, all the other elements are collective of small parts. Therefore, they are called Pradesh is a small part and Kai is Samuha, meaning they are a collection of small parts of the same kind of element. Therefore, they are called Asti Kai. જે દ્રવ્યને અસ્થિ એટલે પ્રદેશોનો કાય એટલે કે સમૂહ હોય તે અસ્થિકાય કહેવાય. Now, why is Kal or time not an astikai? Because time exists in the moment, a samay. So every samay, the smallest indivisible unit of time is samay. And that unit of time, as it flows, it is not present in the next samay. So the next moment, it has gone. And it is not a continuous whole. It is one that flows from one samay to the next samay. That is why it is not called an astikai. કાળ એ કેવળ પ્રવર્તમાન સમય સ્વરૂપ એક પ્રદેશ વાળો છે. That means it exists for the moment and therefore it is only one unit at the time. પ્રદેશ સમૂહના અભાવે કાળ અસ્થિકાય કહેવાય નહીં. Therefore, along with Jeev, all the other elements, the non-life elements, the term astikai is used because they are a collection of pradesh. Therefore, the term panchastikai is also used. So, panch, jivastikai, dharmastikai, adharmastikai, akasastikai, udgalastikai. Those are the five elements which are a collection of Pradeshono Samuha, એટલે એને અસ્થિકાય કહેવાય. Now, this goes into a bit more depth, that everything that is an astikai it is subdivided into skand, desh, and pradesh. Kal meaning time, એક સમયરૂપ હોવાથી એનો એક જ ભેદ કયો છે, meaning it is not subdivided. It's only one samay, that is the smallest unit of time. Whereas Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Akashastikai, Pudgalastikai, and Jivastikai are subdivided into Skand, Desh, Pradesh. દેશ અને પ્રદેશના અર્થ નીચે પ્રમાણે છે. Just to understand these terms, and I think if when we get deeper into it, it becomes more clear of why these things are described in such depth, because then it allows us to understand the element properly, but also then understand the distinctions and the terminology that is used to describe them. A skand is the whole. So વસ્તુનો આખો ભાગ એને સ્કંદ કહેવાય. સ્કંદની અપેક્ષાએ ન્યૂન સ્વવિભાજ્ય જેનો પણ વિભાગ થઈ શકે તેવા ભાગ તે દેશ. So skand is the whole, desh is a smaller unit of that substance, of that element, which can also be further divided, but it is smaller than the whole. That is called desh. અને નિર્વિભાજ્ય ભાગ કે જે એક અણુ જેવડો સૂક્ષ્મ હોય કે પરમાણુ જેવો સૂક્ષ્મ હોય તે જો સ્કંદ સાથે પ્રતિબદ્ધ હોય તો તે પ્રદેશ કહેવાય. The smallest part of the skand is called pradesh, and it is the smallest part, but it is what remains connected with the whole, meaning the skand. And if that sukshma nirvibhajya bhag jo skand thi chuto hoy to તેને પરમાણુ કહેવાય. Now we said jeev, dharmastikai, adharmastikai, and akash, they are composed of skand, desh, and pradesh, but pudgal is skand, desh, pradesh, and parmanu. Why? સ્કંદ દેશ અને પ્રદેશ એ ત્રણેય વ્યપદેશ કથન સ્કંદમાં જ હોય છે. એટલે they are all connected and part of the skand. જીવાસ્તિકાય, ધર્માસ્તિકાય, અધર્માસ્તિકાય, આકાસ્તિકાય, they don't separate from the whole, but they are composed of parts. But if you are, so parts are then labeled smaller than the whole is desh. The smallest part from the whole is pradesh, but they all remain connected and joined together. What is in Udgal, the smallest particle, Parmanu, can separate from the whole. જો દેશ અને પ્રદેશ સ્કંદથી છૂટા હોય તો દેશ પ્રદેશ ના કહી શકાય, કારણ કે સ્કંદથી છૂટો પડેલો દેશ અલગ સ્કંદ જ કહેવાય છે, અપેક્ષા એ દેશ કહેવાય, પરંતુ મુખ્યત્વે જો તો સ્કંદ જ કહેવાય છે, અને સ્કંદથી છૂટો પડેલો પ્રદેશ પરમાણુ ગણાય છે. એ પ્રમાણે ધર્માસ્તિકાય તથા અધર્માસ્તિકાય દ્રવ્યોનો સ્કંદ સંપૂર્ણ 14 રાજલોક પ્રમાણ છે. દેશ તેનાથી કંઈક ન્યૂન તે યાવત દ્વિપ્રદેશ પર્યંત અને એક પ્રદેશ રૂપ તે પ્રદેશ છે. So question is asked here, why not have a fourth division like in Pudgal, ધર્માસ્તિકાય આદિમાં દ્રવ્યમાં પરમાણુ રૂપ ચોથો ભેદ કેમ ન હોય? ધર્માસ્તિકાય, અધર્માસ્તિકાય, આકાશસ્તિકાય અને જીવાસ્તિકાય એ ચાર દ્રવ્યના યથાસંભવ અસંખ્ય અને અનંત પ્રદેશ વાળા સ્કંદમાંથી એક પણ પ્રદેશ કોઈ કાળે છૂટો પડ્યો નથી, છૂટો પડતો નથી અને પડશે પણ નહીં. Now let's explore that particular statement a bit more. એવો શાશ્વત સંબંધવાળો એ ચારે સ્કંદો હોવાથી તે ચાર દ્રવ્યમાં પરમાણુ રૂપ ચોથો ભેદ નથી. When we started the introduction of Ajiv last time, I think I mentioned that Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Akash is present throughout the Lok Akash. Akash has got two parts, Lok Akash and Alok Akash. So Dharmastikai and Adharmastikai are only present in Lok Akash. Beyond the Lok Akash, there is complete nothingness, meaning no bodies can move beyond the Lok Akash. So nothing can enter Alok Akash because the Alok Akash does not have any facility or the element called Dharmastikai which will allow a body to move, and does not have any facility for a body to stay still within it. Therefore, Dharmastikai and Adharmastikai are Lokvyapi. Akash is Lok Akash and Alok Akash. Pudgal is different because the smallest indivisible particle of matter, Pudgal is matter, the smallest indivisible particle of matter is called Parmanu. Therefore, Pudgal has got a fourth division called Parmanu. So a question is then asked that if these other elements, Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Jivastikai, Akashastikai, cannot exist separately from the whole, if the small parts of it cannot exist separately as a whole, then what's the point of actually subdividing it into this different classifications as Skand, Desh and Pradesh? It would be better to just call it as one Skand, meaning a whole. So the explanation is that આ ચારે સ્કંધોમાં પૂદગલ પરમાણુ જેવડા અસંખ્ય અને અનંત સૂક્ષ્મ અંશોનું અસ્તિત્વ સમજવા. Even though it is a whole, it does have the smallest elements like Parmanu, and we need to understand it in that context. Therefore, those three Bhed of Skand, Desh and Pradesh is important. Then another question is asked, is a Skand Is a Parmanu bigger or a Pradesh bigger? The answer is Pradesh and Parmanu બંને એક સરખા કદના જ હોય છે. જરા પણ નાનો મોટો ન હોય, પરંતુ સ્કંદમાં જોડાયેલા હોય તે પ્રદેશ કહેવાય. So that which is connected to the whole is called Pradesh. And if it exists separately from the whole, then it is called a Parmanu. And as I just explained, only in one element, that is Pudgal, that is matter, that particular separateness, existence in a separate form as a Parmanu is only possible with Pudgal. And Pudgal, just to remind everybody, means matter, meaning that which has the ability to come together and separate. So both Parmanu and Pradesh are the same size, but if they are joined with the whole, they are called Pradesh. And if they can be separated from the whole and live and exist separately, then it's called Parmanu. And that ability is only present with Pudgal. It is not present with Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Akash, and Jeev. And the other thing to understand is that Dharmastikai, Adharmastikai, Lokakash, and Jeev, they are all the same size. Meaning the soul can ultimately expand to the extent of the whole universe. Dharmastikai extends to the extent of the whole universe, meaning Chaudrajulok. Adharmastikai extends there, the Lokakash, Chaudrajulok. Lokakash, meaning that which is within the universe within which bodies can move, is Lokakash. Beyond that is Alokakash, which is infinite. And Jeev, before it goes to moksha, there's a process called Kevali Samudgat that it may do. And in that process, the soul expands to touch the corners of the universe and then shoots straight up to go to moksha. So the Jeev has got the same capacity to expand as big as the whole universe. Just very briefly, the way Dharmastika is explained is that like water in a river or in the sea or a lake can aid the movement of a fish in that. So the enabling element for motion, like water for a fish, is called Dharmastikai. If you want to see something, then another example that's given here, the eyes have the ability to see, but the presence of light enables the eyes to see. It is impossible for the eyes to see when there is complete darkness. So light is an enabling element for the eyes to be able to perform their function. Birds can fly in the sky, but they need the presence of air to be able to fly. So air is an enabling element. Similarly, for all bodies, life and non-life, Dharmastikai is the enabling element that allows movement, motion. જીવ અને પૂતગલમાં ગતિ કરવાનો સ્વભાવ છે. બોથ મેટર એન્ડ so non-life, matter and jeev, life, they have the ability to move. They are naturally able to move. But if dharmastikai is not present, then neither jeev nor pudgal can move. Therefore, dharmastikai is sahakari karan, meaning it is the enabler. ધર્માસ્તિકાય જીવ અને પૂતગલને ગતિમાં સહાય કરવાના સ્વભાવવાળો છે. It is arupi, meaning it is not visible to us. 14 રાજલોક જેવડો મોટો છે, અસંખ્ય પ્રદેશ યુક્ત છે. It is composed of asankhya pradesh, meaning parts, and it is without varna, gandh, ras, sparsh and sabdat, meaning it is different from matter. It is non-material. It does not have any color, it does not have any smell, it does not have any taste, and you cannot feel it. So it's describing dharmastikai as to how big it is. It extends throughout the universe, Chaud Rajulok. It is astikai, Pradeshno Samuha. And it does not have any varna, meaning color, taste, touch, and any kind of noise. So sabdati, varna, gandh, ras, spars and sabdati rahit che. Another explanation that is given here about other mastikai, or another way of explaining it is, for a traveler who is looking for some shade in a forest to escape the hot sun, he comes and rests under a tree, and in the shadow of the tree. મુસાફરને વિશ્રામ કરવામાં જેમ વૃક્ષાદિની છાયા અપેક્ષા કારણ છે, પાણીમાં તરતી માછલીને સ્થિર રહેવામાં અપેક્ષા કારણ જેમ દ્વીપ અને બેટ છે. So if say a turtle swimming in the sea wants to rest on land, then it finds a piece of rock or an island and goes and rests there. તેમ ગતિમાન જીવોને તથા પૂતગલોને ગતિ છોડી સ્થિર રહેવામાં અપેક્ષા કારણ અધર્માસ્તિકાયનો એક અરૂપી પદાર્થ. So adharmastika is also considered to be an element which allows bodies to remain still, which is also present in the universe. 14 રાજલોક જેવડો મોટો છે, અસંખ્ય પ્રદેશી છે, તે વર્ણ, ગંધ, રસ, સ્પર્શ અને શબ્દ રહિત છે. Now it's explaining this further. સ્થિર રહેલા જીવ પૂતગલને ગતિ કરવામાં ધર્માસ્તિકાયની પ્રેરણા નથી, તેમજ ગતિ કરતા જીવ પૂતગલના સ્થિર કરવામાં અધર્માસ્તિકાયની પ્રેરણા નથી, પરંતુ જીવ પૂતગલ જ્યારે જ્યારે પોતાના સ્વભાવે ગતિમાન કે સ્થિતિમાન થાય છે, ત્યારે ત્યારે એ બે દ્રવ્યો ગતિ સ્થિતિમાં સહાયક થવાનું ઉપકારી અપેક્ષા કારણરૂપ છે. એટલે what it's trying to say is that these are enablers. They do not actually make bodies to move. So if you and I want to move, the desire to move is our own doing. We make that decision. Dharmastikai enables it. If you want to stay still, then adharmastikai enables that. But neither of these elements, dharmastikai or adharmastikai, pushes to move or to stay still. So they are enablers, they are not the drivers. Okay. So both life and non-life bodies move of their own accord, but these two elements make it possible for them to move or to stay still. Now, one more corollary to this, to understand this in a bit more depth. भाषा उच्छ्वास मन इत्यादि पुद्गलों ग्रहण विसर्जन तथा काय योग आदि चल अस्थिर क्रियाओं धर्मास्तिकाय विना न थाय, meaning the ability to produce sound, the ability to breathe, the ability to think, because man is also considered to be an instrument which uses manovarganana pudgal, meaning it uses matter. None of their ability to function or to stay still is possible without धर्मास्तिकाय and अधर्मास्तिकाय. અર્થાત બધી ચલ ક્રિયાઓમાં ધર્માસ્તિકાયનો ઉપકાર છે અને બેસવામાં ઊભા રહેવામાં ચિત્તની સ્થિરતામાં. So even for the mind to stay still, એ દરેક સ્થિર ક્રિયામાં અધર્માસ્તિકાયનો ઉપકાર છે. So when we are trying to still our mind in meditation, it is only possible with the aid of Adharmastikaya. And when our mind keeps on moving from one place to another, that is possible because there is Dharmastikaya. આ જગતમાં લોક અને અલોકમાં પણ સર્વત્ર વ્યાપ્ત વર્ણ ગંધ રસ સ્પર્શ શબ્દ રહિત અરૂપી અનંત પ્રદેશી અને નક્કર ગોળા જેવો આકારવાળો આકાશસ્તિકાય નામનો પણ પદાર્થ છે. So space again does not have any solidity. It does not have any color, any smell, any taste, any sound, and it is invisible. It is space and it is present within Chaudrajalok, that is Lokakash, and beyond that. And અનંત પ્રદેશી અને નક્કર ગોળા જેવો આકારવાળો આકાશસ્તિકાય નામનો પણ પદાર્થ છે. આ આકાશ દ્રવ્યનો ગુણ ધર્માસ્તિકાય અધર્માસ્તિકાય જીવો અને પૂતગલોને અવકાશ જગ્યા આપવાનો છે. So we exist. Dharmastika exists. Adharmastika exists. Pudgal, non-life exists within that Lok Akash. So its function is to provide space for these elements to exist. And the shape of Lokakash, it describes here, is like a man standing with his arms on the side, with the legs spread apart. And that is the shape of the whole universe. And you've probably seen diagrams of that in a lot of Jain texts. That is also depicted in the shape where our Potus Bar Derasar actually sits. So if you look from the sky, and I'm sure you are all aware of that, that particular shape is depicted there. And it is also the shape of the Jain symbol that you're probably all familiar with. Now I'm going to stop here. I talked a lot. I'm sure you got some questions. You are all able to switch on your videos if you want to. So please feel free to do that. Bharatbhai, anything you want to add to what I have just covered, or any mistakes that I might have made?
No, I think you've covered it well, Ajitbhai. Nothing to add.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, we are entering into a difficult realm of understanding. We basically quickly introduce the topic of Ajiv. But as I've said, the ultimate aims to understand Jiv. Again, to remind everybody, the Nav Tattvas are Jiv, Ajiv, Pap, Punya, Ashrav, Samvar, Ashrav, Bandh, Samvar, Nirjara, and Moksha. Those of you who were listening to Rakesh Bhai, he did mention Nav Tattva in one of his lectures for the last Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'm not sure exactly which day. And the topic was very briefly discussed. But he actually described it Ashrav, Bandh, Samvar, Nirjara, and Moksha. In our texts, we would say Ashram, Samvar, Nirjara, Bandh, and Moksha. But quicker way of understanding the relationship is what I just mentioned earlier. The order doesn't matter. The most important thing is knowing the distinction between Jeev and Ajeev. Okay. Let me stop talking so you can start asking. I'm quite happy for you to think about this, digest it. But does this make sense? I mean, in terms of matter, which includes energy, there's probably no sort of element of debate. But the elements of Dharmastikai and Adharmastikai are not mentioned anywhere in ordinary science as we learn it in school or even at a senior level. But if you go deeper into physics, I'm not sure, and I may be treading on a subject that I know nothing about, but there are things like the string theory and some of the things that knowledge of Dharmastika and Adharmastika that Jain Dharma describes could be related to some of that speculative theories that are propagated by physics. Is there any student of physics in our midst who knows a bit more about the string theory? You've all heard of subatomic particles. We're talking about particles smaller than protons, neutrons, electrons, and there are a whole host of them. And what Dharma is explaining to us is that science will never be able to actually find and define the smallest indivisible particle called Parmanu because it is beyond the grasp of any visibility or instrumentation. But the concept exists that matter is not as small as atom as we thought maybe early part of last century. Then protons, neutrons, electrons were discovered, and then further research suggested that there were more subatomic particles. Anybody? Has anybody studied physics at a degree level here? No?
No.
Okay. Dharmastika and adharmastika has probably no obvious reference, but I have some impression that the string theory is beginning to describe something like that about the connectivity of everything and movement, etc. And that may relate to something like Dharmastika. I'm not sure. Okay. We'll get into the depths of Pudgalastika, which talks about the various different kinds of matter. And we'll introduce words like Vargana and the different Varganas that make up matter. And we'll become familiar with words like Manovargana, Karman Vargana, and the different Varganas are composed of Parmanu, but they are all finer and finer, and we'll understand that different types of Varganas and what they do and the various manifestations of that matter that we come across. So we'll get into the depth of that as we go along. And once we have studied that, we will start talking about Ashrav, Bandh, Samvar, Nirjara, and then ultimately Moksha. Still a very long way to go. Okay.
Ajitbhai, a couple of one question and one statement that's just come in.
Yeah.
So the statement from Hasmukh,
Mm-hmm.
he says that today is Rishabdev's Javan Kalyanak.
Yes.
He entered his mother's womb.
Yes.
His lifespan was 84 lakh purva.
Yeah.
Add on the lifespans of all the other Tirthankars, add on the time since Mahavir Bhagwan's Nirvan.
Mm-hmm.
That's how old this current Jyotishi is.
Yeah.
And a question from Jyoti.
Mm-hmm.
She says, you mentioned we are individual souls coexisting but separate from each other.
Yeah.
In Siddhshila,
Mm-hmm.
when soul goes to moksha,
Mm-hmm.
soul is formless. So will each soul still be separate individual soul?
Yes, very good question, Jyoti. Yes, each soul is a separate individual soul, though each soul is merged with each other in the sense, not merged, but occupying the same space. It's like the way it is explained is that if you got a room with, say, 1,000 divas, then even though each divo is individual, the light of that is what brightens up that room. Similarly, every soul that has gone to moksha and will go to moksha in the future occupies a space, but within the same space, there may be a lot of other souls coexisting, but each one of them is individual, occupying the same space. And each one of them, each soul in its free state, has its own individual experience of all the virtues of the soul, and it is staying there in complete total bliss. but each is individual. They've all gone to moksha, infinite number of souls, or an infinity in the past, and will continue to occupy the same space on Siddhshila for all time in the future. But they will all remain separate.
I think Rajibhai explained this similar way on Saturday as well, using the light as an example, that if you have one light or 1,000 lights, you'll still occupy the same space. Yeah.
Hope that answers your question, Jyoti. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other question?
Nothing else has been sent to me. If anyone has any questions, just raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay. There's no further questions, then we will come back to this next week. And meanwhile, carry on with your studies and carry on thinking about this subject. Okay? If I've said anything that is against the teachings of our great Tirthankar Paramatmas and our Sadhu Bhagwans, I ask for forgiveness. Jinagna Virudh kain pan bolyo ho te samay manu sankaya kare tasmichhami dukudam. Saramangalamanglyam Sarakalyan Karanam Pradhanam Saradharmanam Jainam Jaiti Sasanam. Stay well. See you all next week.
Pranam Ajitbhai. Thank you.
Thank you, Pranam Ajitbhai. Thank you.